First, let's start with this case. I am a 26-year-old woman, and in July, my mom kicked me out of the house. My sister Rachel, who is 34, and I decided to become housemates. Rachel lives in another city and rarely visits, so it felt like I was living alone, which I thoroughly enjoyed. While Rachel and I were in the process of finalizing our living arrangement, my other sister, Hoops, who is 31, started crashing on my couch. She hinted that she might want to move in permanently. The problem? She had quit her job. I told Hoops that if she wanted to move in, she needed to talk to Rachel as well, get a job, and contribute. However, Hoops only told Rachel and Mom that she needed a break, not that she planned to stay permanently. She began staying at my place in August and started bringing friends over without informing me. Without any discussion, she even bought a bed and placed it in the room that was supposed to be mine. One day, she brought over a friend and told her to stay overnight without asking for my permission. I spoke to Hoops about how uncomfortable this made me, but she got defensive, saying, "But I know them," and, "Am I supposed to ask for permission?" While she made a minor adjustment, her behavior didn't change much. She continued to have people sleep over without consulting me. As time went on, Hoops stopped helping with house chores and began leaving her mess behind. On multiple occasions, I had to call her to wake up while I was at work or traveling whenever the housekeeper came, as she would sleep until the afternoon and ignore her phone or the door. This situation continued for 2 months. When I messaged her, asking her to stop, she responded with a thumbs-up emoji and an excuse about not sleeping well due to construction noise. Despite my request, barely anything changed. She also started staying over at friends' places without notifying me and only messaged me when she needed money. Every time I asked about her job search, it felt like a struggle to get any information. I told her she needed to contribute financially, especially since Rachel was planning to move out, but nothing improved. The final straw came when I left a new bidet spray outside the bathroom and a trash bag that had been filling up in the kitchen for 2 days to see if she would take the initiative to handle it. She didn't. When I pointed it out, she got defensive, claiming she didn't see it and told me I could ask nicely. At that point, I snapped. I told her she wasn't pulling her weight, and she accused me of treating her like a maid. That's when I told her she needed to move back in with our mom. We argued back and forth, with Hoops accusing me of showing my true colors and claiming I was looking for any excuse to kick her out, knowing she was trying to figure things out. I told her she moved out of Mom's house on her own and could just as easily return. I also told her to leave the apartment key behind, but she didn't. As a result, I informed her that she had the weekend to return it or I would change the locks. Over the span of 5 months, I gave her around $3,000 for personal expenses, not counting food and other consumables. I feel like I was extremely patient and put up with a lot, but she pushed me over the edge. Despite this, Rachel thinks I'm the one in the wrong, and Mom says we're both at fault. So, Reddit, am I the bad guy in this situation? Let's start judging. Definitely not the idiot. You helped out your sister that entire time, and she won't even do decent small things like help out around the house. Yes, she's your sister, but even family has limits. She didn't even tell you about things like when strangers would sleep in your home. Doesn't matter if she knows them, it's your home. If you aren't comfortable, then they shouldn't be there. End of story. So no, you're not in the wrong for what you did. You're not in the wrong. She was mooching. Good riddance. Get the locks changed. You're not in the wrong. But I also see your mom's point that you are both at fault, although you much less than your sister. You let your sister crash at your place, and when it became clear she intended to move in permanently, you failed to set clear boundaries. What room she would be taking, how much rent she would have to pay, and what chores she would be expected to do, etc. That said, your sister needs to grow up, move home with Mom and figure things out there. Kicking her out is hopefully the wake-up call she needs to do just that, because she isn't entitled to your home, your money, or your peace of mind. Next up, I, 25-year-old female, and my boyfriend, 28-year-old male, have been together for 3 years and have been living together with my twins, 3-year-old male, for 2 years. Their biological father, 26-year-old male, and I were never in a relationship, and he didn't want to be involved in their lives until they turned 1. We have an informal custody arrangement where he has them every other weekend on Saturdays, with me handling drop-offs and pickups. However, last weekend, my boyfriend had to pick them up because I was on a work trip. For context, my twins have known my boyfriend for their entire lives. We've been together since I found out I was pregnant. He was there for every ultrasound, birth class, and even stayed up through countless late nights helping me care for them. He's always treated them as if they were his own, and in my eyes, they are as much his children as they are mine. When my boyfriend went to pick up the kids, not for the first time, they called him Daddy while he was speaking to my ex. Initially, my ex didn't seem to react negatively, and my boyfriend left with the twins. However, while I was at the airport, my ex called, yelling at me about how disrespectful it was for the twins to call my boyfriend Daddy. He claimed that they wouldn't speak at his house, something I hadn't noticed at home, since they are always talkative until they fall asleep. He also complained about the custody arrangement, which had been his idea due to his demanding work schedule, and blamed me for the twins being closer to my boyfriend. He further argued that it wasn't fair how comfortable the twins were with my boyfriend, while his fiancée had difficulty bonding with them. I ended the call because my flight was boarding, but later, his fiancée began calling and texting me. I ignored her because she has a history of being hostile toward me, even during simple drop-offs. That night, I discussed the situation with my boyfriend. He said it was my decision whether or not the twins should continue calling him Daddy. He loves it, but would understand if I asked them to stop. I love that they call him Dad, as he has more than earned it, but I also don't want to cause unnecessary conflict with my ex. I'm conflicted because, while my ex is their biological father, my boyfriend has been their father figure from the beginning. Thank you all for your support and advice. My boyfriend and I went through the comments together while the twins were napping, and we especially appreciated hearing from those in similar situations. It gave us valuable insight on how to handle this. There are a few steps we plan to take moving forward. First, many commenters suggested formalizing our custody arrangement. We currently don't have a legal agreement in place, so my boyfriend will be contacting a friend who is married to a family lawyer to help us draft one. Secondly, several people raised concerns about potential emotional manipulation at my ex's house. I've been in therapy since I was 12 due to depression and anxiety, and with a family history of mental illness, therapy has always been something I considered for my children. Although I didn't want to start it this early, given the current circumstances, my boyfriend and I have decided to look for a therapist for the twins. As for my ex, I had to block him earlier today because he repeatedly called and texted me while I was at work. I have also removed him from the daycare pickup list. I plan to message him tomorrow, but for now, I don't feel comfortable sending the twins to his house. We are planning to stay with my boyfriend's parents out of the city for a while to give ourselves some space and time to figure things out. That's all for now. I will keep you updated as things progress. Thank you again for all the love and support. It means a lot to us. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Your boyfriend is the dad that your twins have known. He's always been there, and they have made the choice to call him Daddy. I would be concerned about the twins' behavior around your ex and his fiancée. They seem like they don't feel comfortable, and your ex should not be forcing them to hug someone they aren't happy to hug, even if it is his fiancée. Sorry, but the ex needs to put on his big boy pants and realize that he hasn't made the effort, and that has affected his relationship with his kids. Don't stop your kids from expressing themselves. If they feel comfortable calling your boyfriend Daddy, then let them. You're not in the wrong. Just because the sperm donor is being an idiot is no reason for you to change the twins' reality of who they see, who they call, and who in reality has been operating as their dad. It's also going to be up to them as they grow older, and if they want to call the other guy Dad as they grow up, they can. You've no need to change anything right now. I can think of at least 3 friends and old classmates who grew up with a stepdad and were still in a good relationship with the biological dad. and all of them called both of them Dad. You're not in the wrong. Your biological father needs to work on his insecurity and jealousy, which is totally understandable, but he can't expect you to forbid your children to call your boyfriend Dad. It's actually very healthy for them to see him as their father. If their father and his fiancée can't bond with the twins as much, they should work on understanding why and becoming closer to them. Next up, my wife, 29-year-old female, and I, 27-year-old male, have been married for several years. Before we got married, we had multiple discussions about having children. Both of us agreed that we did not want kids. I have high-functioning autism, and the thought of raising children is incredibly stressful for me. One specific conversation we have had numerous times went like this. Here's the deal. Not only do I not want kids of my own, but I would never be willing to take in nieces, nephews, or other family. I don't mind visiting with kids or having them over for a weekend or a day trip, but even if we were the best family to take in a child, it would be a deal-breaker and divorce-worthy. I understand. We are on the same page. You don't have to worry about it. Now, we are facing the exact situation we discussed. My wife's sister and brother-in-law were sent to prison for manufacturing and selling illegal substances. And now our 6-year-old niece needs a new home. If we take her in, she can stay in her current school district. However, due to the circumstances, she isn't even attending school at the moment, though she has some kindergarten friends. There are 2 viable options for my niece. She lives with us. She lives with her grandparents across the country. The grandparents are wealthy, loving, very healthy, in their late 50s, and they adore their granddaughter. They are also more than willing to take her in. I casually mentioned to my wife how our niece would enjoy having a big yard at her grandparents' place, and my wife became very upset. She accused me of being cold and unloving, saying that we cannot abandon our niece and that she would be heartbroken if she couldn't see her every week. My wife also expressed concern about removing our niece from her friends, even though I pointed out that many children adjust when parents relocate. She insisted that we would be letting our niece down by not taking her in. I listened to her for about half an hour, trying to understand her point of view. I reminded her of our previous discussions and emphasized that we had agreed on this matter before and after getting married. I explained that while I understand her feelings, taking in a child is something I cannot do, and if she feels strongly about it, I would support her decision, but it would mean the end of our marriage. I was calm and polite throughout the conversation. I never raised my voice, and I told her that I would support her in any way, including a divorce, if she chose to take in her niece. Since then, my wife has stopped talking to me, and my parents think I'm being unreasonable. However, her parents, the grandparents of the niece, are on my side. They were aware of my stance on children and are ready to take in their granddaughter. While we could financially support our niece and provide her with space, the grandparents can offer her a much better environment. They have a larger home in a beautiful, woodsy area, and since they are retired, they can dedicate all their time to her. Meanwhile, my wife and I both work long hours, often 10-hour days. Am I the bad guy in this situation? Edit. I didn't immediately bring up divorce. After my wife talked about her feelings for half an hour, I suggested that the grandparents would be a better option and reminded her of my limitations with children. Only after an hour of discussion did I mention divorce, but I realize now that perhaps I should have waited longer and tried to reason with her further. I can be too blunt at times and struggle with not immediately stating what's on my mind. Edit 2. During our conversation, I proposed finding ways to stay connected with our niece if she moved in with her grandparents. I apologized to my wife for bringing up divorce so quickly and told her I would be willing to use my personal savings to cover the cost of her visiting her niece multiple times a year. Additionally, I offered to have our niece stay with us for a week during summer breaks, even though it would be stressful for me, because I love my wife and want to support her. I am currently waiting for her to respond to my messages. Let's start judging. No one is in the wrong. You guys had an agreement at one point of your life, but things change, and people change their minds. That's allowed and okay. The child should go to whoever can love and care for her best. That doesn't sound like you, but it's understandable if your wife starts to resent you for that. Sure, she knew your stance, but she is still allowed to change her mind. No one is in the wrong. I think if you already put divorce on the table, the relationship is already doomed. She will resent you regardless. You don't want kids, and she is willing to give up being child-free for the benefit of her niece. It's a no-win situation, really. You're not in the wrong. You've talked about no kids. She has the right to change her mind. We've all done it. But she shouldn't have assumed you would change yours too. It doesn't seem like it would be best for the niece to live in a house where one person struggled every day with her presence. In hope you have more talks with your wife before you choose divorce. Next up. So I, 22-year-old female, live with my roommate Katie, 24-year-old female, and we've been sharing an apartment for about a year. Initially, things were fine, and I even thought it was cool that she enjoyed cooking. She used to make these fancy meals and sometimes offered me some, which I appreciated. However, things have taken a turn, and now I feel like I'm losing my mind because she's become obsessed with cooking. Katie cooks every single day, sometimes twice a day, and it's never simple meals. She's always making these elaborate dishes that require almost every pot and pan we own. The problem is, she doesn't clean up right away. Often, I'll go to bed with the kitchen a mess, and when I wake up in the morning, it's still the same. To make matters worse, she's started experimenting with things like fish stock and fermented foods, which make the entire apartment smell terrible. Another major issue is the fridge. Katie has completely taken over all the available space with her leftovers, jars of sauces, and random ingredients. It's gotten to the point where I can barely fit my essentials like milk and eggs. Last week, I came home starving after work, and she was in the middle of making a huge meal. When I asked if I could use the stove, she told me I'd have to wait 2 hours because she needed it for her process. I was so hungry I ended up eating cereal. I finally told her that she needs to chill out, stop monopolizing the kitchen, and at least clean up after herself. She got really upset and accused me of being unsupportive of her passion and selfish. She compared it to me watching TV, saying, "I don't complain when you watch TV all the time, so why are you complaining about this?" But that comparison doesn't make sense because her cooking directly impacts me, whereas my TV watching doesn't affect her. Now she's being passive-aggressive, saying things like, "Oh, I'll just eat frozen meals from now on since I'm such a problem." This has made me feel kind of bad, but at the same time I pay rent too, and I should be able to use the kitchen when I need to. Let's start judging. Like, you need to have a sit-down discussion with her when you are both rested, not drinking and not cooking. You each deserve 50% of everything in the apartment, and are each 100% responsible for cleaning up after yourself within a reasonable time frame. Decide what that is. My opinion would be within 2 hours. Offer to share the kitchen every other day. In other words, no cooking missions on your day. Simple meals that require heating up or leftovers. On her day, she can have at it as long as she cleans up after herself. And it's not your job to support her passions. It's her parents' or spouse's. And sometimes in life, there are periods where you don't get immediate gratification. She needs to learn to deal with that. So you're not in the wrong. You're not in the wrong. The problem isn't her cooking. The problem is she's treating the kitchen like she lives alone. You both share a kitchen, so she needs to make sure to leave enough space for you to be able to make your meals and for your own stuff in the fridge. She also needs to clean up after, because, again, she doesn't live alone. You may need those pots or utensils. If she's going to continue hogging up all the space, then she needs to make food for you as well, and make sure it's available for you to eat before she takes 2 hours on the stove. She also really needs to make things that don't stink up the whole house. She can experiment with stuff like that later, when she lives alone or with a partner who doesn't mind. It's not life or death where she absolutely has to make this stuff right now. Definitely you're not in the wrong. It's your apartment too, and you have a right to use the appliances. She also gets to watch the TV too. Maybe you need a roommate agreement where you set out ground rules for cohabitation. Stand your ground. If it's truly her passion, maybe she needs an external outlet for it, like culinary school.